So here we are. I'd like to say I'm bringing up some obscure passage of the Bible, but here we have the Good Samaritan. Probably not anybody's first time hearing this story. But I think maybe it's so familiar that we miss some of the details along the way because we just kind of know the story. So, as this traveler is going from Jerusalem to Jericho, it's saying it's going down to Jericho. Well, we think going down and we think going down the Cape or something, right? We're in summer mode, but Jericho is not south of Jerusalem, it's more like northeast. The going down part has to do with the going down the hill. And you're going to Jericho, it might have been a road something like this, but this road was hilly. And these bandits weren't just something that Jesus made up for the sake of this story. This was a dangerous road to travel. You got these hills going around, anybody can be around any corner. It's like in Psalm 121, when we read, "I lift mine eyes to the hills, where will my help come from?" That psalm is maybe about this trek to Jericho. And it's not this beautiful, God is in the hills. It's, look at these hills. Where's my help going to come from? So here we have the traveler going to Jericho. And then, of course, tragedy happens. And on the side of the road, who comes by? A priest, and then a Levite, and then a Samaritan. You know, this was not unlike a formula like we would know, like a priest and a rabbi and a minister go into a bar, right? Except, priests and ministers hadn't really been invented yet. So here we get a priest and a Levite and a Samaritan. A priest, a Levite, and a Samaritan. Now, the first two, they might think, oh, I see where this is going. But then you get this curveball thrown in of a Samaritan. There was a seminary that was teaching the Gospel of Luke as a class, and one week they were given a really difficult test on this passage. You know, you had to know all your Greek, you had to know all of these different things about Jerusalem and Jericho and people who were from Samaria. And on the way that they would have to go from their dorms to the classroom, the seminary had staged that there was someone in distress on the side of the road, on their path from the dorm to the classroom. And something was going on, and they were wailing and crying. And did any seminarian stop to help them on their way? No. They were too busy going on their test on the Good Samaritan. So I imagine not much has changed in 2,000 years when we think about what the priests and the Levites might have been up to. They were too busy doing their things or whatever it was. The point isn't really about them. It's about the Samaritan. Now, earlier this year, I went down to D.C. and I decided to go to the Museum of the Bible. Now, if you don't know anything about the Museum of the Bible, I would say this: go, but be a filter, not a sponge, okay? There's a lot of stuff in there that maybe doesn't match up with the kinds of things that we preach, but there's cool artifacts and good exhibits. And a temporary exhibit that happened to be there while I was there was all about contemporary Samaritans. I had no idea that the Samaritan community has never died out. They're still around. They have been on their holy mountain, Mount Gerizim, in Nablus, which is in Samaria, to this day. And as of the census last year, there's about 874 Samaritans still remaining. About half of them, a little more than half, are right there on that mountain where they maintain their ancestral home, and another half is closer to Tel Aviv. But this community is still out there. You know, in what we call the West Bank of the Jordan, you have Samaria is in the north half of that. You have Judea in the south. Judea is where Jerusalem is. And this has been a sort of contested area, at least since the time of Jesus. So Jesus, in this parable, first sends forth a priest, then a Levite, and now a Samaritan. See, it doesn't quite make sense that a Samaritan would be on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. Those are both in Judea. Samaria is a little bit north of all of that, so maybe the Samaritan was just traveling, doing some trading, but it might have been a kind of dangerous place for them to be too, because Judeans and Samaritans differed just enough in the way that they interpreted their religion that there was a lot of kind of bad blood, you could say, between them. The Samaritans then, as now, they trace their ancestry to those kinds of lost tribes, especially the tribes of Joseph that were in the north. And that after the northern kingdom collapsed in 700 BC, they still remained there. And they have their own version of the Torah, which of course says Mount Gerizim is the holy place, not Jerusalem. But other than that, it's mostly the same. I think one interesting fact about Samaritans that plays into all of this is the wordplay in the name Samaritan itself. See that Hebrew root Shem, Mem, Resh, that all has to do with being guardians, being people who watch over. So the Shomronim, as modern Hebrew calls the Samaritans, could be called the guardians. And so here we have a Samaritan in this story that's really living up to their name. This person comes to the aid of this traveler and says, I am a Samaritan. I am going to watch over this person. I'm going to guard them. I'm going to keep them safe. I'm going to do whatever I can to bring them to safety and healing. And we know the story. They put them on a donkey and they go to an inn and they say, look, take care of this person. I gotta go, but here's some money on the way back. I'll take care of whatever else you needed in order to make this person whole. And after all of this, Jesus then asked the Torah experts, so, which one of these three was the neighbor? And the answer came, and I can only imagine it was something like this. The one who showed compassion. Because the person couldn't bring themselves to say it was the Samaritan. They couldn't even say that word out loud because they're not part of us. How could it be that those people had someone so good and noble that, do I even have to say their name? In 2023, who would our list of three be? I don't know. Would it be a senator, and then a Hollywood executive, and then all of a sudden, here comes this drag queen to save the day? I think we would like that in this church. We would like that telling of the story. Maybe there'd be a social media CEO, and then an influencer go by, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, we have this just progressive church layperson come by to save the day. That's how we would love that story. Isn't that how we would love that story? But there are some groups of people that I think even we educated, intellectual, progressive types kind of look down on. And we say, well, what if there was someone in a red baseball cap that came and saved the day? Could we bring ourselves to say that to Jesus? Maybe we don't like what they stand for, but in this case, they came and they brought this person to the hospital and they paid their bill and made sure everything was taken care of. If Jesus said, well, who was it? Who showed compassion?